Green Harbor Waterfront Lodging is nestled in a woodland setting on a picturesque ocean inlet. Green Harbor offers so much for a fun-filled yet affordable family waterfront vacation. Enjoy our private boating beach with ramp and dock, free rowboats and paddle boats, oversized heated outdoor pool and kiddie pool. You'll enjoy our attractive waterfront and beachside accommodations. So visit us online at gogreenharbor.com.
Internet services provided by Cape.com Incorporated. Established in 1994, Cape.com is the only locally owned and operated internet service provider on Cape Cod. Our specialties include e-commerce applications and design, wide area networking services, and high-speed DSL internet access throughout eastern Massachusetts. Cape.com continues to lead the way with cutting-edge applications, superior networking services, and quality customer support. For more information, visit us at www.cape.com or call us at 539-9500.
And welcome to the Monday, June 1st, 2015 meeting of the Board of Selectmen. I would ask you to rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As you know, the Board of Selectmen was just meeting in executive session for the last hour, and we have now returned to open session. And our first order of business is the reorganization and the election of officers for the upcoming year. On the first meeting of the board after an election, that is usually the first action that the board takes. And I want to, at this time, congratulate Doug Jones on a very successful election, and we welcome him back to this board. I think I can speak for all the members of the board when I say that it's been a really fabulous year for us. I think we have all learned to work together very well and deal with the issues and move things on. And so it's been a real pleasure for me this past year to serve as chairman and to also be a member of this board. So the first order of business then will be to elect a new chair. And with that, I will entertain nominations from the board. Sue?
Madam Chair, I nominate Doug Jones as new chair.
Second. Are there any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, the vote will come on Doug Jones as chairman for this upcoming year. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. So congratulations,
Thank you
Mr.
very
Chairman.
much.
The purple folder is yours. The gavel is yours. And thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Pat. Our next order of business is to hold election for our vice chair. Do I have any nominations for our vice chair?
Mr. Chair, I nominate Sue Moran as vice chair.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll entertain a vote on Sue Moran as vice chair. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next item of business on our agenda is a proclamation. Ms. Flynn, would you like to read the proclamation, please?
Yes. Whereas the town of Falmouth is home to a large number of Portuguese American people, and whereas the Portuguese culture is praiseworthy and world famous, and whereas Luís Vaz de Camões, the famous 16th century epic poet, is a symbol of Portuguese cultural achievements and is honored by Portuguese people the world over on this day. And whereas members and friends of the Portuguese have formed an association to foster Portuguese culture and instill a pride of heritage. And whereas a committee was organized to plan a celebration of these events, the Day of Portugal, the remembrance of the dearly departed. And whereas Falmouth joins with other Portuguese communities in recognition of Luís Vaz de Camões' great accomplishment of recording Portugal's notable and remarkable history to be promoted on this day. Now therefore we, Mary Pat Flynn, Doug Jones, Rebecca Moffat, Susan Moran, and Samuel Patterson, as selectmen of the town of Falmouth by the authority vested in us, do hereby proclaim June 13th, 2015 as Day of Portugal.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None?
I have to say, I really wanted to do this because it's taken me 18 years to pronounce Luís Vaz de Camões, and the Portuguese helped me do it, so I had to do it one more time. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any announcements from the board or from the town manager's office?
No, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Just to continue a tradition that started in the winter, I do want to announce that we have two local teams, the Falmouth High School girls softball team that will be playing in the state tournament, and the Falmouth Academy girls lacrosse team that I've been coaching had their first tournament game today, and they remain undefeated after winning in the game against Martha's Vineyard 10-3, and so both teams certainly are deserving of congratulations. Now we're going to have public comment. If there's anyone who'd like to comment on an item that's not on our agenda, please do so. Please make sure you state your name and try to keep your comments to under 2 minutes.
Nancy Hayward, West Falmouth, Precinct 5. I'm a 42-year resident of Falmouth. I would like to suggest that the Board of Selectmen have a broader plank in favor of historic preservation in the town of Falmouth. That is, the preservation of the character of the town of Falmouth. It says behind you that we were incorporated in 1686. This is a long history, and I think we should do our best, you should do your best to help the town retain this quality. There are events going on in town which I don't think enhance the character of Falmouth, and I think that we should try to stay in touch with the historic roots of this town. And partly in light of this, I would like to point out to you and to the public that I have been a member of the Falmouth Historical Commission, and I have one more meeting as a member of that commission. And we currently only have 3 members. So there will be no ability for the Historical Commission to hold any meetings, and it's my understanding that someone has had their name into the town since last October. I know that you have a couple of people who are being appointed to committees tonight, but I had mentioned this in the front office a month or so ago, and I probably have not actively pursued this enough. Anyhow, I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you, Nancy.
Mr. Scher.
Dan Shearer, Precinct 6. I've lived in this what town a lot of years. I don't want to say how many. I'd like to ask the selectman and the administrator to help solve a problem. The problem was given to us by the enterprise, and that's the announcement of meetings. Meetings in town are open to all the public. They can come to them, they can work with them. But since the enterprise has only gone to one publication, we're getting, and I'm estimating now from what I've seen, about 40% of the meetings are now listed in the paper. And I really believe that's very unfair. I think we either have to find a way to do it, and I don't have the way to do it. So, I mean, I'm putting that in your hands, or give up all the announcements and make everybody come to this bulletin board, which I think is going to be very, very hard on a lot of people. And I hope we can solve this, because I think it's very important that we do get the input from non-board committee members of what they need in this town, and great ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Finneran.
Mark Finneran, Precinct 6. Yeah, and I brought a little visual aid with me tonight. I'd like to speak on the question that we had on the ballot regarding the Lawrence School windows. We were asked to vote for $3.9 million for 400 windows on the ballot, which passed overwhelmingly. That equals $9,750 per window. I had my hand up during this for quite a while. I put it down once, I got tired, put it up again. I didn't get called on. So I went to Lawrence School after town meeting, and I looked at the place and I counted all the windows. 330 of the windows are the large ones that you probably all think of when you think of Lawrence School. They're 5 foot by 10 foot to the rough opening. They were replaced in the mid-'80s. At that point, it was past any time where you would have asbestos in anything. They were gutted right out to the brick and reframed with aluminum. I priced these windows up in this configuration. 2 awning windows on the bottom, 2 awning windows on top, because there's no air conditioner that provides for natural convection. They're $1,576 per window. At $1,576 a window, that's $8,174 profit and overhead. Seems a little extreme to me. Now, those are hurricane windows. If it's deemed a substantial rehabilitation, they have to fall under the new building code. The building inspector makes the choice. If it isn't deemed a substantial rehab, you can get these windows for $800. That would be $8,950 profit and overhead, whatever you want to call it, for an $800 window. If you're not careful, these people might try to sell you a bridge. Actually, they already have.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Netto?
Good evening. Joe Netto, Precinct 9, lifelong resident of town. I don't know if that's a requirement now. I see previous speakers. I'll skip the age and just say lifelong, of East Falmouth. Thank you for the proclamation, Day of Portugal. The Portuguese community does always appreciate that. This is my first trip to the podium on the public input side. And I have a question that I would hope to get an answer to tonight. It's very simple. 2 weeks ago tonight, after reading in the paper, I was not attending the meeting, that Mr. Suso announced, and the Board of Selectmen, you folks announced, that you were going to do a study of the police station as a communications center. So my question is, do we have a cost for that study? And what is your funding source to pay for this study? Mr. Suso and Mr. Jones?
With our public comment, it's not a time that we're going to answer questions because it's not on our agenda. We're trying to be adhere to the open meeting laws and not have a discussion on those kind of issues. Certainly those are questions that outside the meeting, I think I may be able to answer them, or you can find them out from the town manager.
Oh, okay. So tomorrow, if I see Mr. Suso, he could answer the... Oh, well, thank you. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you very much.
We're just trying to stick with it. Yep. Next question, please.
Good evening. I don't have anything to show you, so it's just me talking here. During the...
Just your name, sir.
Brian Backstrand. I live on Milton Street.
Great.
During the agenda item around the sewer grid and the policy, will there be an opportunity for discussion then, and should I wait, or should I...
Wait till then, please.
Wait till then.
Yep. Thank you very much. Any other public comment? We'll move on to our minutes. First are from May 15th, 2015, the public session.
I have a comment, if I may. I was not present, so I'm going to abstain. But I would like to see that any selectman who is absent, that also be recorded in the minutes, if you would, please, and record my name as appropriate. Thanks.
I had on one on page 7, under the public comment. I just said the last name was unknown. It was Matt McNamara who spoke then. Any other changes? Yes. Entertain a motion to approve as been amended.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And one abstention.
One abstention, yes.
Next are the Monday, May 18th executive session minutes.
I'm going to move that those be held.
Okay, we'll put those aside.
Second? Or do we need any?
We do not need a motion to
Okay.
hold. Next are the administrative orders. We are pleased to announce that in executive session this evening, we were able to accept contractual agreements that have been made between the library employees and the DPW employees that will get us through 2015, 2016, and 2017. Item number 2, we have a Conservation Commission request to coordinate with the 300 Committee and the AmeriCorps Cape Cod a cleanup day on the Cardozo Parcel in West Falmouth. And we have
I move approval.
Are we going to do these individually or all in one?
I'll read through them each one. If you have one you want to discuss, we can
And
certainly do
hold
that.
it?
Yep.
Yeah, I would hold it.
Okay, item number 3 is to approve payment for a shower tower from Manduano donation account. Item number 4 is to support the Conservation Commission's purchase of a conservation restriction on Kelly property on Sipwisset Road, and to vote to support the 300 Committee and the Conservation Commission application to the CPC to fund this conservation restriction in the amount of $70,000. Item number 4 is to authorize the town manager to execute an extended, updated memorandum of understanding with the Falmouth Commodores. Item number 6 is to designate a special municipal employees, John Shea, the special counsel of groundwater discharge permit to DEP, Michelle O'Brien, special counsel on wind turbine cases, and Chris Morog, the special counsel on water, wastewater, and public works projects. Item 7 is to authorize the town manager to submit the CZM grant to maintain renew permits for Chapcoy Peach Nourishment. Item 8 is to authorize and sign a letter of support for the state CPC match funding. I'd like to hold that just to give a few details from Mr. Patterson on that. And item 9 is to authorize the expenditure of more than $500 from the Historical Commission revolving account.
If I could hold on the Falmouth Commodores,
Right.
number 5.
So we're holding
And I'd like to hold 4.
So 4, 5, and 8 are we going to be holding?
So, Mr. Chairman, I would move numbers 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, and 9.
Second?
And all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? The ayes have it. Number 4, the Conservation Commission's purchase of a conservation restriction on the Kelly property on Sipwisset Road.
Yeah, just wondered whether there was someone that could explain it to the public so that the public would have a better idea of what this is all about.
That's good.
Hi, I'm Jessica Rittenauer, Administrator at the 300 Committee Land Trust, and Tom Stone, our Vice President of the Board, is here with us this evening as well. I can give you a brief overview of what the 300 Committee has voted to pursue, and also the Conservation Commission who voted back on May 20th. The overall goal of this land acquisition over on Sipwisset Road is to permanently protect 8 acres of land. And it would open up public access to the western part of BB Woods from Sipwisset Road. And that public access to the western portion of BB Woods does not currently exist. So it's essentially a public access improvements project. Also, there's high conservation value within this 3-acre area due to wetlands and wetland protection. The transaction itself involves the purchase of one parcel. It's a buildable residential lot, vacant lot. It's 0.54 acres. That has an appraised value of $235,000. The neighboring lot, which is owned by the same family, includes a residence and a wetland. So that lot would be subdivided. The family will maintain their residence. The wetland itself would be segregated as a conservation lot, which makes it's about 2.6 acres. So the 2.6 acre wetland plus the 0.54 acre land purchase makes up the 3-acre area. And it creates a really wonderful corridor, wildlife and public access corridor, not only to BB Woods, but to the 300 Committee's Flume Pond Conservation Area, which is 28 acres directly across the street on Sipwisset Road. The connection essentially goes from Buzzards Bay itself all the way across to the eastern portion of BB Woods. And of course, Peterson Farm, 88 acres, is connected there as well. So it's a missing link in a 500-acre conservation area. So it's really a key acquisition from that perspective. The role of the town and the role of the 300 Committee, just briefly, the 300 Committee intends to own the parcels. So we would purchase the land that's for sale. The Conservation Commission would actually purchase a conservation restriction. We, as the land trust, can own and maintain conservation land, but we cannot hold a conservation restriction on land that we own. It has to be held or overseen by a third party, which would be the Town of Falmouth Conservation Commission. And then the land donation, the wetland piece, would also have a conservation restriction that we would convey to the town. The subject of the community preservation grant, and that's one of the reasons why we hoped to be on this agenda this evening, is that the Conservation Commission and the 300 Committee are applying for a net contribution of $70,000, hopefully to be funded through community preservation to support the Conservation Commission's purchase of the conservation restriction. All of this is designed to facilitate the permanent protection of this parcel. We're leveraging private money. About $65,000 of the total budget would be privately raised. $85,000 we're hoping to get from a state grant, and that the 300 Committee is actually, that's one of a few state grants that we are eligible to apply for directly. So that's $85,000. There's a $20,000 Buzzards Bay mini grant that only the town is eligible to apply for, and we'll have to be back with those details when the next grant round is officially announced. We anticipate that to be in July. And then, of course, the community preservation proposal. So it's a combination of funding sources, which we like to do because it leverages private money and public money combined, really is how we make these land deals happen. So I hope that explains
Perfectly.
what we're working on and the different components. So land purchase and the CR purchase itself is the belt and suspenders to ensure that the land is permanently protected.
I do have one question, Senator Weathers. Is there any thought about putting parking there so that you actually can
Excellent.
get there?
Yes. I didn't mention that, but absolutely.
Okay.
So unpaved parking area within the buildable lot. There's a wetland buffer, so we would definitely locate the parking area in the upland, so avoiding the buffer zone itself. But we view it as a trailhead creation project, so we would absolutely want to allow for 3 or 4 cars. And then we would extend a trail from where the existing trails end at BB Woods so that we could connect to the parcels.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to...
I move that the board support the Conservation Commission's purchase of a conservation restriction on the Kelly property on Sipawissett Road. And let's see. Oh, and also to vote to support the 300 Committee and the Conservation Commission application to the CPC to fund this conservation restriction purchase in the amount of $70,000.
We have a motion.
Second.
A second from Rebecca. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Unanimous. Item number 5 is to authorize the town manager to execute extended, updated memorandum of understanding. The Commodores, Ms. Moffett, you had a question on this one?
I was hoping someone would be here, that's why I held that.
Heather can.
There's actually,
Okay.
I can speak to a question if it relates to the town Commodores relationship. Also, Mark Kasperzik is on the board of the Commodores, and he's here this evening.
I just want you to explain so the town knows what this is. That's the reason I held it. If you could come up to the microphone.
Mark Kasperzik, Vice President of Falmouth Commodores. This is a memorandum of understanding as we've had with the town for how many years now?
4 or 5 years.
5 years. And every year it's a memorandum in the making where we review with the administrator and town manager about different aspects of the memorandum that we need to change in working with the town for improving the field or other issues that come up that we have to resolve. So there's a number of issues that we talk about when it comes to the field, how we interact with the town in terms of getting work done in the area, and so forth. Did you have a specific question?
No, I just wanted you to tell us just what are those items that you're interested in. what is it you would like for the town to agree to
Can
in this memorandum?
Heather?
I mean, that's,
Maybe I can help. We have a sort of a permanent agreement with the Falmouth Commodores that was entered in by the board. It's essentially a license agreement. The town and the Commodores chose to do a year-to-year agreement. At the time, there was some thought by the Commodores that they would be doing a major renovation, expansion of the field project. That hasn't really borne fruit. But we found that going year to year is very, very healthy for both the town and the Commodores because there generally are some very small items that need to be addressed. It forces us to get together. We have a meeting with the school finance director, the athletic director, the recreation director, some of our facilities maintenance staff. There's a lot of different parties involved in the use of particularly the locker room facility. As you can imagine, the high school baseball team needs to move out as the Commodores move in. Some of those transitions are really important. This year, the key issue that we talked a little bit about is how to maintain the restroom facilities while the Commodore games are going on without added too much expense to the town side in terms of supporting the Commodores. And I think we've got that all worked out, and we just need to draft up those details, and that's what the town manager will be asked to authorize. But generally, they're very small issues that we work through, but we found that doing it on an annual basis works for both the Commodores and the town.
and it's a one-year contract.
It's a one-year, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other
Thank you,
questions
Mark.
on the memorandum of understanding?
Do you know when this is? We're supposed to announce it, but there's no date.
I move that we authorize the town manager to execute an extended and updated memorandum of understanding with the Falmouth Commodores.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none? And the ayes have it. Mr. Passon, number 8, this is something you're bringing forward about the authorized to sign a letter of support for the state CPC match funding.
Yes, the Conservation, I'm speaking for them to some extent. I don't see any members here. The Conservation Preservation Committee received an alert from a coalition that they belong to actually, I guess you would say, notify their legislators of the fact that in budget negotiations between the House and the Senate, monies that would have normally been used to supplement our match to the 3% surtax that we charge ourselves for, that pay for all of the projects that come before the Community Preservation Committee, that match be lifted. I think the Senate basically was saying that they didn't want to supplement the approximately 16% that comes from certain fees that get charged with any additional amounts. When Falmouth first started under the CPA, Community Preservation Act, we were actually matched 100%. So the state contributed 100% of what we contributed for all the projects in town. This past year, I think we're down to 18%. So it's come down quite a bit. That's because many other communities in the state of Massachusetts said, this is a good deal. You know, we're going to contribute an amount, and then the state's going to match. Well, this year, they're going to cut it back, and we might be fortunate to get 16%. So anyway, the Community Preservation Committee basically said, we want the Board of Selectmen to sign a letter to our legislators saying, please come forward. You should be able to provide a little bit more of a match than those funds that come automatically out of certain fees. And so that's what this is all about. Perhaps we should just read that letter so that everybody knows what it is. Okay. Would you permit that?
Sure. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. To the Joint Committee on Revenue, Senate Committee Chair Michael Rodriguez, House Committee Chair J.R. Kaufman, State House in Boston. And it's a reference, an act to sustain community preservation revenue. Dear Senator Rodriguez and Representative Kaufman, we write to ask you to strongly support and favorably report on an act to sustain community preservation revenue. Why is it important to Falmouth? The Massachusetts Community Preservation Act has provided Falmouth residents an incentive to pay a 3% surcharge on their property taxes each year. The state match has declined this year from a high of 100% in early years of CPA to only 18%. This act you are considering will compensate for that significant decline in enhancement revenues. What are CPC? What are What has this Community Preservation Committee accomplished? Our CPC has been diligent and effective in identifying worthy projects. This observation is verified by strong support to CPAC articles at town meeting, CPA-funded projects that have helped to restore and preserve the unique historic quality and aspect of our various villages that comprise Falmouth, expand and preserve the protected open space that our residents enjoy that draws over 100,000 visitors each year. We just supported a letter to do that. Ensure an array of safe and accessible recreational facilities for our young people, vacationers, and people of all ages. And fourth, make progress toward meeting our goal of 10% affordable housing, which is especially important since young adults and professionals cannot afford to live here, and older people on fixed incomes are hard-pressed to find suitable housing. We believe that you're reporting favorably on the Act to Sustain Community Preservation Revenue will ensure that the Commonwealth continues to benefit from the enhancement of CPA participating towns and continues to inspire residents to vote to participate in the Community Preservation Act. Thank you for your consideration.
I'll take that as a motion.
Second.
Any further discussion on this?
Yes, I would just like to say that I learned today that the Senate leadership and the House leadership are going to meet this Thursday to reconcile the budgets, move them together. So I think we have time to get this up here, and anybody else who believes in it as much as we do, please send your emails to either House Speaker DeLeo or Senate President Stanley Rosenberg. We would really appreciate it. Thanks.
Mr. Patterson?
May I also add that I attended a Massachusetts Municipal Association meeting last week, actually a week and a half ago, and this very subject came up there, and they were encouraging all municipalities to really contact their legislators to support this kind of revenue enhancement. So this is coming up not just through the Community Preservation Committee, but also through the collaboration of municipal leaders across the entire state.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Unanimous. All right. Our next item is under special events. We have a request from the Falmouth Rotary Club for a shelter box demonstration. Do we have someone here from the organization? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Will Barrett. I live on Main Street, and I'm a member of the Falmouth Rotary. There's a Cape-wide interest among the Rotary clubs on the Cape to react to the earthquake disaster in Nepal. It's our club's feeling that the best way we can react to this is through participation in the Shelter Box program, which delivers emergency shelters to areas that have been hit by natural disasters. So we want to raise as much money as we can in as short a period of time as we can, and our hope is that we can replicate the effort that was done roughly 5 or 6 years ago, I think, when the earthquakes hit Haiti. At that time, this was before my time in Falmouth, but my understanding was a very successful fund drive was held by way of setting up a shelter box in Peg Noonan Park and soliciting donations from passersby. So we would like to do that again, and I've been in touch with some folks in town government about this, and the guidance I've gotten has suggested that June 20th at Gus Canty Park, at Gus Canty would be the soonest that town property would be available to us. Our hope is that we could end up in Peg Noonan, which obviously is a more central location. So I'm going to recommend to the club at our meeting tomorrow night that we work with your internal working group to find a date, hopefully sometime during the busy summer season, when we can use Peg Noonan Park. So I have information about Shelter Box if anyone's interested in hearing about that. I look forward to, I guess what I'm looking for is some guidance. Are there some times when Peg Noonan Park might be available, and who should I talk to about that?
Well, since I was briefly last week involved in your request. The problem with the 20th date is that's the Arts Alive
Right.
week, and they use Peg Noonan
Right.
Park, the library lawn, the whole place.
Right.
But the 27th, Peg Noonan Park could be available, because that's the last day in June, and it's not available in July, because the board established a policy that July and August would be sort of hands-off on Peg Noonan Park.
Okay.
So June 27th is available.
Okay.
If you want to go with
Okay.
that date.
So could I apply for that date? I understand there are 60-day lead times for some aspects of the application. If I applied for that,
Well, my understanding is they already have your application in.
Okay.
And Diane Davidson in the office, who pretty much manages that, is
Okay.
sort of holding that date.
Okay.
And if you want it, I think if you call her tomorrow, you
Okay.
could probably secure the 27th.
okay, terrific.
And I think we
Is
could
that-
actually even approve the
And we
date
can approve it
tonight
tonight.
on
Okay.
the Peg Noonan Park. Heather?
I think the biggest issue is that the board's policy asks the working group to avoid special events on main streets of our villages in the months of June, July, and August. So if the event is to occur in June, July, or August, this board needs to approve it. The working group would not recommend it because it would be inconsistent with the board's policy. So if the board would like to see an application in June, July, or August for the use of Peg Noonan Park, I think you need to provide that direction this evening.
That's interesting.
That's difficult to answer because that is our agreement, June, July, and August. And I have always followed whatever advice we've been given. That is hard for me to change my mind on that.
Mr. Patterson?
I have a question, just how big an exhibit is this? So we have an
It's-
idea of the impact?
There's going to be a tent that is sized to fit a family, and I don't know how big a family. I know there's a couple of Rotarians here. How big was that?
It's basically about 10 feet wide, and it's about 2 feet long.
Yeah. We would propose to set this tent up on a Saturday morning of whatever weekend is approved, man it 24 hours a day through Sunday afternoon, and dismantle it Sunday afternoon. So there's that additional aspect to it.
I just want to mention, I'm a member of Rotary. I don't think that presents any kind of a conflict. But could you talk about the last experience that when you used a shelter box at Peg Noonan Park?
My understanding is that about $10,000 was raised, which purchased, they cost about $1,000 a piece.
Right.
These boxes, which are you could probably put 2 of them in the back of a typical pickup truck. These are stockpiled at various distribution points around the world so that they can be sent to the areas that they're needed. My hope is to raise somewhere around $10,000 so that we can ship 10 of these units to Nepal.
Ms. Muffet?
Did you have all of this organized in April and May? The
No.
issue is June. That's where the issue is.
Yeah.
Well, no, if it's Nepal and the earthquake,
Yeah.
I guess not.
Yeah.
I was still on Haiti in my mind. Of course you didn't.
Yeah. No, it's happening kind of fast. And we have not done a lot of preparation. I'm still, it's happening kind of fast, I know.
And September is too late?
Well, our hope is to, while the Nepal disaster is fresh in the public's mind, our hope is to take advantage of that. My feeling, if it was up to me, we would press ahead and do something at some point whenever that can happen, because the need is going to be ongoing for a considerable period of time. We do have a fallback option. If Peg Noonan Park cannot work, I have an inn at St. Barnabas Church, and we might be able to do something on church property, and that would be another set of questions I would ask you, or would ask the appropriate person, what do I need in the way of permits to do something like this on private property?
Nope. No permits from the town.
No
Just
permits,
from the
okay.
church.
Yeah, I'd sort of like, I want to support this effort because I think it's the right thing for us to be doing. But I want to defer to our managers to see whether we have any kind of a solution, to this initiative, which, just recently started and kind of doesn't quite fit into our
Yeah.
typical application process. Is there anything we can
Sure.
do at this point?
Well, I just want to reiterate what our policy says, and that asks the special event, the events group to be sensitive to the problems in June, July, and August on their main streets of our villages. It doesn't say we can't do it, it just says to be sensitive to that and to be very cautious about creating more traffic on the main streets. I see this as an event that isn't necessarily going to be creating more traffic, but trying to take advantage of the traffic that's there already. And it won't, I don't think, bring a ton of people there, but the people who are already there are going to get a chance to make a donation, to learn some more things, and as opposed to some of the other events where we're hoping it's going to bring a bunch of people there, we're thinking that people are already there, and that's where I feel a little differently about this issue than some of the issues with the special events group. And that's where I think we could give some message to the special events group saying, yep, we understand the recommendation, how consistent you're being, this is one where we could have some flexibility with it.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just piggyback on your very appropriate comments. This is a unique and unprecedented international disaster, so this is not likely to be something, hopefully, that you'll be seeing annually. And it's a special initiative by the Rotary Club, and so I think in that regard, it is specific and unique and one time. Hopefully we won't have disasters like this occurring with greater frequency. So I think it also creates a special category along the lines that you've just commented upon, where this board to want to consider June 27th, for instance.
Any other comments? Heather, anything said?
No, I think you're on the right track.
And you know of no conflicts of that particular weekend?
None that we're aware of, no.
It's also the kind of event that it's passive in the sense that it's not going to draw a lot of people out. It's really a matter of catching people as they come by and giving them an opportunity to contribute, right? Well, I would move approval of this application.
For the Saturday, June 27th at
Saturday?
Noonan Park, Saturday and Sunday.
Through Sunday.
Through Sunday afternoon, 4:30, if that's acceptable, yeah.
Let's say 5 o'clock.
What was your statement about 24 hours?
Thinking that it would be awkward I didn't want to leave the tent set up overnight without somebody there to keep an eye on it. My understanding from the Haiti experience was that Rotarians actually spent the night in the tent to sort of help dramatize the situation a little bit. It would just be easier to leave the tent up overnight, and leaving it up overnight in a crowded public space. My assumption was that the town would prefer to have somebody there to keep an eye on it. If that's if that's not important to you, then we can work around that. We could take it down if you'd rather we didn't, and put it up again. I don't think it takes a lot to set this tent up, and to my knowledge, there's not a lot of other stuff that goes with the tent, is there?
Everything is fitted within a small area, but it does include cooking stove. You're not going to be cooking.
Right.
But all the utensils necessary to heat it down.
I think we have that same agreement over at Marina Park, that they have someone that is there 24 hours if there is a structure. So I understand that part of it.
Sam?
I think the building inspector has to be involved in this because it is a tent of a certain dimension.
Depends on the size of the tents.
Yeah,
right.
Because of the size, so you're going to need to touch base there and make sure they do an inspection.
And certainly with the DP, with the Parks Division also, to figure out exactly the right location for it.
Right.
Heather, did you want to?
I was just going to recommend that the board authorize it subject to review and conditions by public safety and building.
No, I'm glad to include that as part of the motion.
And I'll second the motion as amended.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, very good luck with that.
Thank you and the rest of your Rotarians.
Okay, our next item of business is a presentation on the Board of Selectmen betterment policy for the Little Pond service area. Mr. Jack, and just to be clear that we are not voting the betterment tonight. That will be coming up in a few weeks, but this is just a first piece of materials that we need set forward before we can even begin the betterment policy.
We'll take this. We can take care of it.
We have a light manager.
Perfect. No, they're fine.
No, that's good.
That's good.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Good evening. As was already indicated, this is not a betterment hearing discussion. It is just for the purpose of trying to establish a policy for rating the betterments, all right, and what SEU is, or a sewer equivalent unit. So I have a very brief presentation that will end with a table of which includes the various categories of the betterment area and how those assessments would be applied based on that. So as far as the overall process, this is just to give everybody an understanding, and especially for the public, okay, of where we are. That tonight, as part of that process, is to review and hopefully adopt a betterment policy. Then after that, we will conduct a betterment hearing that will occur either later in June and or early July. At that time, the board will have to adopt an order of assessment as it is known. So you'll have to vote on the area that's being assessed, so there will be a map for the board to sign. It's a Mylar map that requires the individual signature with a special pen by each of the selectmen, because that will be recorded in Barnstable as the formal area to be assessed. So the properties will either be in or out of that betterment area. It will be accompanied by a list that has the betterment value for each of the properties to be assessed, and that too will go to Barnstable, because then it will be recorded as a lien on each individual property as an estimate. I think the estimated cost is very important for people to understand, that when we go into a betterment process, even though in this particular process we already have the contract values for the most part, so it's not a full estimate where we wouldn't have gone to bid in advance. Knowing what the bid values are gives us a better estimate to be able to apply. That's what gets recorded as a value on a property. When the project is completed, which is 2 years down the road, plus or minus, that's when a final assessment will be made. And the final assessment cannot exceed the estimated value. It can be less if the project comes in under contract, then the actual final value will be less, but we cannot by law exceed the estimated value. So I think that's important for homeowners to understand. The apportionment of the cost, generally on betterments, we have a 70-30 split, whereby 70% goes to the abutters, 30% is borne by the town. So in this particular case, I'm sorry?
You're wrong on the chart.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. That is opposite, yes. It would be 70% to the abutters and 30% to the town. That was actually adopted at town meeting, so the board would be confirming that. The other important component would be the repayment term, and special legislation allows the board to set a repayment term of anything up to 30 years as a maximum. Prior to that special legislation, any of the betterments that we had previously done, the maximum period was 20 years on the repayment schedule. And I had already covered the last couple of items there on the estimated assessments.
Have a question?
And the
Just
final.
a question, Ray, on the 30 years. In previous years, you mentioned it was 20 years. Was this special legislation that allowed the 30 years?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Yes.
And, Mr. Chairman, just to underscore before we leave this slide, it should have said 70% owner, 30% town, just to clarify. So if a viewer happens to see that, I want to make certain that with the assistance of those in the audience, thank you. That was just an inadvertent oversight in putting the PowerPoint together.
In the betterment hearing, is that when also we determine the interest that may be added on, or is that a later on process?
No, that could be at the hearing. It's not required to be at the hearing, or it could be later than the hearing. There's also special legislation that allows the board to adopt up to 2% above the net, and net in this case is that we're getting a zero interest loan. So the board does have the option of applying up to 2% on the betterments. I know one of the things that will need to be considered at that time specifically would be any deferrals, because deferrals are generally done with interest that accumulates over time. So even if it's not interest that the board adopts on the actual betterment repayments, they can make the exception as well and do it for deferrals.
And to clarify what the special legislation was to add the language up to. The previous language was 2%. And we have actually, the legislation allows us to do anywhere from 0 to 2, as opposed to what the old language had been.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So the purpose of this policy is to establish a baseline rate unit. We call that unit a sewer equivalent unit, or an SEU. It has various names, but in this particular case, sewer equivalent unit is the most appropriate use of the term. The baseline is established as a single-family home under Title V, which would represent 110 gallons per day per bedroom, or 440 gallons for a single-family home. So that is where the baseline for all of the categories is actually coming from. It's dealing with that as the initial set. When it's used to determine the betterment assessment unit and total value, first, by establishing the unit, it means that we would be dividing the total project cost by the number of SEUs in the service area after the board adopts a policy, and that would give a total value, all right, as well as an individual value. So it would say what a baseline SEU value is, and then based on how many SEUs a property was assigned, you would multiply that times the baseline value, and that would give the total value being assessed for that particular property. So it does two things. It comes out with the unit and the total value. The policy that you'll be looking at this evening, similar to any policy like this, would establish various categories of uses. And this is because we have a diverse area. It is not all residential. We have a mix of residential and commercial. So it's very, very difficult to try to establish what a fair or equitable arrangement would be for applying the betterments. Use would be assigned one or more, so in no case would any use be assigned less than one. So regardless of how many bedrooms a property may have, whether it's a condominium or a single-family home or a multi-use home, and we'll see this on the chart, at a minimum, each one would be assigned one unit as a starting point. The project cost is divided by that total number of SEUs in order to determine what the individual unit cost would be. Next slide, please. So this is a table that describes where we are. For a single-family home or condominium, it would have one unit assigned that equals 440 gallons per day, or a single-family home. If it was multifamily, and by definition here, multifamily, we're including multifamily and two-family categories as the single one. If it's up to 4 bedrooms, it would be assigned one unit. And if it's multifamily that equals 5 bedrooms or greater, it would be 1.5. I think it's important to understand, as part of all this too, that the flow neutral bylaw guarantees that when a property connects to the sewer, that they have that value of what their connection is by right. So we would be granting them basically this number of bedrooms or flow. For restaurants, lounges, taverns, or fast food, they're considered the same as commercial under this policy, which would be 1 unit. These are all small establishments. Apartments, 0.25 per bedroom. That too is under Title V, where you would have a 1 unit minimum assigned. Commercial buildings, 1 unit per business within a commercial building. There are a couple of them that have a mixed use where they may have apartments or bedrooms upstairs, in which case you add 0.25 for any bedrooms that they may have to whatever the mixed commercial use is. And of course, for each business that is operating either independently on its own as a standalone building or as part of another building gets 1 unit as an assessment as part of the whole property. Vacant lots would be assigned at a minimum 1 unit per lot. The law does allow that the potential use under existing zoning can be considered for determining an increased number of SEUs. Hence, if you had like 1 acre zoning and you had a 7 acre lot, then theoretically you could apply 7 betterment units or 7 SEUs to that vacant lot with the presumption that it can subsequently subdivide. Vacant property for buildings, treated the same as a commercial building, that it would be 1 unit per the present potential use. Gas station or auto repair facility, we have one of those in the area, would be 1 unit. That would be treated the same way as commercial. The 2 here that are unique is the Admiralty Motel and the Falmouth Mall. They're unique in that both of them are under an ACO, which is otherwise known as an administrative consent order that's issued through DEP, and that is based on their proposed flow, meaning they will have a design flow for a Title V system proposed to DEP, and that has an assigned gallonage value or flow value assigned to it. For the Admiralty Motel, I believe that's in the 19,000 gallon a day range. For the mall, it's in excess of 20,000 gallons a day as a maximum allowable permitted flow through DEP. So in these 2 instances, they are large, they are unique, and we have actual numbers in order to determine what an assessment would be. So there would be large assessments applied in both of those instances, but the actual values would be based on documents that we currently have for an ACO. I think it's also important to understand that the reason that they have that ACO is because their daily flow exceeds that allowable for Title V under the state code. So they have basically 2 options. 1 is to connect to a municipal system, and 2, to build their own treatment plant and operate it. So this would be in lieu of that treatment plant component. And of course, for all of these, if I were to presume that they were applied over a 30-year period, I think that another important thing for people and businesses to understand, these betterments are not assessed against individuals, they are assessed against the property. And so they don't have to be actually satisfied until that property is sold. So it represents, especially on the last 2, a substantial property value, if you will, to have that flow assigned to that particular property on a sewer use. So that's where we are, and if you have any questions, Mr. Duffy is here this evening. If it's legal, Mr. Batanis is here this evening. If it's about the sewer service area itself or anything that I can offer.
Any questions from the board?
Now, I have a comment, though, this isn't the first time I've seen this, obviously, but I want to say that I'm astounded at the simplicity with which you were able to put together the SEUs for each of the properties in the town. I think anybody looking at it, it's very easy to understand. Most of it is really all 1 unit or a small multiple of 1 unit, 1.5, or depending upon the number of bedrooms in a larger facility. And I just have to commend you for that, because I think most people would look upon this as being a very complex and complicated endeavor to be able to put together something like this. And well, at least it's in a district. It's not the entire town. Where the entire town, it would be obviously much bigger than that. But I think it's very understandable. It's easy for people to read, and I think I just want to thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Do we have any questions from the public who would like to ask about this part of the betterment aspect? Yes, sir.
I don't have
You
a question.
have a comment? And again, we will be having a betterment hearing on the other issues, but really what we're trying to discuss right now is the establishment of these SEUs for each piece of property.
Okay, I don't know if what I'm going to bring up is specific to the SEUs.
Okay, we'll try.
Okay, but I'd like, Brian Backstrand in Milton Street, I'd like to request a review of the policy for the exceptions to those of us who are not on the grid in a reasonable amount of time. So I understand there's a process that needs to take place. I don't pretend to understand what that process is.
You're saying if you're asking that you're going to use an alternative system and you do not want to use the sewer, what the
No,
process?
I am currently not on the grid, but I would like to be tied into it. So my particular property, I understand there have been other requests from other homeowners as well. I believe mine would be a lot less complex from the standpoint of my property was subdivided several years ago. So the original house is right on Mara Vista. My house was subdivided behind it. My property line is literally 40 feet from the very middle of Mara Vista, which is where I understand the pipe will be, to my property line. It's a fully developed area. I wouldn't expect anyone else on my street, for those of you who know Milton, that would request to be part of it. I certainly would be willing to pay for whatever that extension would be. But I really would, I've been at this for a year, I've spoken to Jerry multiple times. I'd like to go through the appropriate process, but I'd really like to be tied in if at all possible.
I don't have any, I think Mr. Jack may have a better answer than I do on this one.
We haven't crossed that road yet.
Yes, there have been a number of inquiries along those lines. For every sewer service or any betterment area that you define on a map where you literally draw that line right down the middle of a road, for every component of it, somebody is only a few feet away. So inevitably, something like that is going to happen. The system is being designed and will be constructed to handle some additional flow. In this particular case, though, the sewer service area has been sent in to DEP. It has been approved as such. It has been clearly defined. So for any additional connections that may occur outside of the sewer service area, I do agree with what he indicated, that the board would need to consider that in a foreseeable future through some type of privilege fee, if you will, that would be established whereby additional connections, either individually or collectively, could be considered for connection into the system. That means that we would have to go through a notice of project change with the state in order to be able to accommodate it and stay within the flow limits. And then the board would be in a position to be able to approve those, and you would have a valid figure that they would pay in order to effect that connection.
Is that the same thing we'd be using for a vacant lot that has not been subdivided yet, but was going to, ended up being subdivided?
Correct, because by today's standards, or at least given the policy, a property could be assigned a single SEU. And if it were to somehow change its use or come in with a subdividable component, that we would be able to charge an extra charge as a privilege fee on that. And it gets a little bit complicated, but let's take it this way. If you take a vacant lot that was assigned one SEU, and then that lot subdivided, but the board had another policy on additional connections outside of this betterment, then that betterment would be applied separately for each of those lots. It would be divided, the one unit assessment. But as they came in for individual connections for each of their subdivided lots, each one of those would be required to pay a privilege fee. But that's something the board would have to establish down the road.
Down the road, that was going to be my question. Is there a place or an appropriate time for us in this process to be considering these requests? I mean, is it too early? Is there a time when we can? Is there some time later where it's more appropriate to look at requests such as this gentleman just made?
Well, right now, because it's been proposed to the state in a finite term, a specific sewer service area that's been defined, and because the contracts are let, which have that area included in it. The recommendation would be, of course, to, over the course of maybe the next year, try to consider those, but they wouldn't be included as part of the betterment process because that would have already been done. But theoretically, connections may be able to occur after that.
Okay. So they're not totally left out at this stage? I mean, it could happen later.
No, there's a process.
There's a process.
Yes, there's a process that the board can employ.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Hayward?
Nancy Hayward, West Falmouth. This brings up an old point. It's my understanding that we're talking about the Little Pond service area, but it's my understanding that this is water that's being pumped up to the wastewater treatment facility. This means that there's some calculation for the amount of water that's going to go from all this up to the wastewater treatment facility. And one drop plus another drop plus another drop can end up being a large number. We have a report from the winter that, as usual, the wastewater treatment facility did not meet their minimum level in nitrogen. This impacts Mashapaca Creek and Snug Harbor in West Falmouth. So as you have the discussions about adding this, that, or the other thing, this is an old issue that goes way back. I would like you to keep that in mind. As I said earlier, did I say this time that I'm Nancy Hayward and I live in West Falmouth? I want you to remember that. Thank you very much.
Mr. Netto?
Joe Netto, East Falmouth. Ray, is the homeowner then, after this explanation of SEUs, is the homeowner going to be assessed the betterment when the project is completed, divided by the total number of SEUs?
Total cost.
The total, yeah, when the total cost, because I know we have a meeting Thursday night in TTU school. I imagine this is part of the presentation. Okay, so to kind of get this out there and so I can digest it a little bit more, this is, you know, to comprehend this, after seeing this information, I think I kind of figured it out. So if a commercial piece of property, because I'm assuming that most residential homes would be one SEU, correct?
Yep.
So then a commercial piece of property could be worth 5 or 6, is that correct? So that the commercial aspect, they would bear a bigger cost of the burden, which I would think to compare a home, a private home with a Falmouth Mall is. So those statements are correct. Okay, thank you, then I think I understand. Thank you very much.
And the logic is that we're expecting the businesses are going to be using more of it, and so trying to be as rational and logical as we can with it.
Thank you.
Mr. Finneran?
Mark Finneran, Precinct 6. In the original Selectmen's meeting, before town meeting, when you approached this betterment policy, before you got to the betterment policy, one of the selectmen noted that you have to clean up an old policy. And then he made reference to it not being fair to businesses. And that seemed fine. So you voted that old policy down. So I went and researched, and the old policy was that the betterment was 45%. That policy actually was in existence when you built the new Silver Beach plant, and yet they were charged 70%. It was never really fully explained. I just want to know what the logic was behind raising the betterment that was paid by Woods Hole and downtown at 45% to making the people in Little Pond pay 70%. I don't think it was ever really completely explained, and I was wondering if you could just give me the facts.
I'll make sure that that's done at the betterment hearing. Right now, we're just really trying to deal with the SEUs. Any other questions on the SEUs? I would encourage the board to consider actually voting this policy tonight, trying to get the word out there to the people that what we're thinking about. If we really needed to revise this policy before the betterment hearing, we could do so.
Yes.
But with this information actually set in place, it gives Mr. Jack a much better chance to be able to come up with actual numbers for the betterment hearing, what it's going to be able to cost each resident, each commercial property, because with this policy, we can see what that total number of SEUs is going to be, so we can do the division to get the cost per individual. Ms. Moffett?
I think we've been listening to this for over a year, 2 years, and I think we start to learn the terms. We start to wear them easier. And I think we have thought somewhere it was always going to be around the 70-30, and we did need for the state to agree to that. And I think I agree with you, Pat, that that's an excellent presentation. It's said in layman's terms. And we aren't dealing with something that is easy to understand, but we have been doing it for 2 years or so. So I think as we went through all of that, it was like the homework is done and you understand it, and I think it all made sense. So I think it is time to vote on it, because we have been going around and around about this, and so my recommendation is to have a vote on it.
Quick question, the agenda says presentation. It doesn't say discuss and vote. So I'm wondering if we might need to do that at another meeting.
I believe, according to Mr. Duffy, that if it's on our agenda, we do have the ability to hear the presentation and vote it. But Mr. Duffy, do you think we really need to have that limit listed on our agenda as the possibility of vote?
Brent Duffy, Council, it's an agenda item, you're here to discuss it. I think you can take any action that's reasonably anticipated on the matter.
Thank you.
Yes.
Then I was going to make a motion that we approve the wastewater collection system betterment policy.
Second.
Before we take the vote on
Dated
it,
June 1st, 2015.
if you would just point out what we're planning on doing on Thursday evening, and to say that we will, of course, still take some feedback on this, but could you give a little advertisement for the Thursday evening meeting that we have scheduled?
Yes, for Thursday evening, which is June 4th, there will be a presentation at the East Falmouth School, T-Ticket School.
Next
And
week.
that's
6:30 p.m.
3 days.
6:30 p.m.
6:30. Anyone's invited, for the meeting. It's predominantly for those in the Little Pond Sewer Service area. Announcements were mailed of the meeting time and place and purpose to all of those that are included in the sewer service area. We intend to hand out some information materials as an information packet that is valuable to the residents on where we are now. A lot of people have been starting to make phone calls and for various boards and agencies as to what they do, and this will try to let them know that there's going to be a time and a place for everything. So it's going to be a 2-year project. We aren't expecting any connections to actually take place for at least the next year. And during that period of time, we'll be able to guide everyone and have meetings, other additional meetings, as well as meetings with local plumbers and contractors on how to handle each individual service application as we move forward. So that's the purpose of that particular meeting, is to provide an update on where we are now. There will be other meetings to follow that meeting on a regular basis as needed.
And to be clear, we didn't vote a betterment with this policy.
Nope, that's correct.
The betterment will be voted at a betterment hearing around the end of this month, and we don't have the exact date yet.
And each individual property owner or abutter who will be assessed will receive a certified letter to that effect, notifying them of the date, time, and place and purpose of the hearing. for the actual betterment presentation.
Mr. Patterson?
Yes, and I just want to make sure we clarify, this is not the entire policy for it, which is kind of the way you worded it. It's really establishing this betterment assessment units, so-called service equivalent units, as summarized in Table 1 of this presentation. Right. So I hope we just make sure that when we say policy, we mean this particular
Establishing the
approach.
SEUs.
Right, exactly.
Can I speak to Mr.
Sure.
Jankin? There has been some discussion by some of the Mira Vista residents that I've talked with recently that they're concerned about construction this summer. And I believe that it is construction that is more on the commercial side than the residential side, if there is anything. But I'd like for you just to make a statement while you're standing right there.
Because there is some road construction happening almost immediately.
Correct. Route 28, the disturbances over the last 2 weeks, that was us. That was the sewer installation. Matter of fact, that will serve the Admiralty Motel up there. So that section is complete where the state highway is going to have their limit of work for paving. So only that section is complete. There's additional work that will take place from there, meaning the end of Stop and Shop, out to the T-Ticket School area where the lift station will be. So that construction will not take place in the summertime. That will be reserved for a later date. We are trying to keep all of the construction off of the mainline roads during the summer period, but the purpose of the contracts was to get it done within 2 years. If we were to try to space it out and provide some relief during the summertime, if you will, the contract would have extended over 3 years. So it would have been a very, very difficult process. So there will be, we'll try to minimize the disruption on the mainline roads during the summertime, with the exception of this summer, this month. The contractor needs to get started, so they have to put some of the mainline sewers in on Mara Vista and on Falmouth Heights Road. After that, for next summer, very little disruption, if any, on any of the main lines, but the ancillary roads coming off of them would be in order, in segments, as the contractor goes down, but the disruption shouldn't be too long on any given street. They're short streets. Construction would be in a period of days, if you will, as far as that disturbance goes, and then they move on to the next street. So we're trying to minimize it as much as possible, but it's a big project, and the construction is inevitable. So even if you try to postpone some of it in the summertime, the overall project costs go up dramatically by millions in order to do that. So it's in the community's best interest, the town's best interest, and the Little Pond Sewer Service Area's best interest.
Thank you. So we have our motion and a vote and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Ayes have it. Next item, Mr. Jack again. Discuss and vote to accept the new intermunicipal agreement with the Upper Cape Regional Transfer Station.
Maybe so.
Mr. Jack, on the transfer station.
Really, that's weird. I think it's a change in temperature. Got us noticing out there too.
Oh, I'm sorry. What you have before you is the intermunicipal agreement, or IMA, between the Upper Cape towns and to create the board for the Upper Cape Regional Transfer Station. There's an existing agreement that's been in effect for many years, since 1987. It's pretty much run concurrently with the former CMAS contract.
Please, if we could have the audience be quiet, please.
And this current agreement is about to expire on June 30th of this year. So as the board's aware, the Upper Cape towns are no longer using the Upper Cape Regional Transfer Station. However, as I indicated was quoted in the newspaper as having said last week, it's an 18-plus acre parcel situated on Cape Cod. So there's no question that theoretically it should have some kind of valuable, beneficial reuse in some way, shape, or form that's going to benefit the Upper Cape communities. So at this point, it's not going to really be costing much, if anything, in order to maintain that privilege of having that facility up there and derive any benefits thereof if we have a beneficial reuse. At the present time, The Board of Managers for the transfer station have authorized an RFP for beneficial reuses, and that has been awarded as of 2 weeks ago. So that's a study that will be undertaken to try to ascertain what other types of uses the facility may have for the foreseeable future. So this new agreement, by replacing the existing agreement, allows the town to be able to be a participant in whatever that may be. So there's no obligation on the town to do this, but I don't think that there's any negative to it at this point. All of the Upper Cape towns have been looking toward this now for a number of years. So some of the differences, if you will, or benefits to the agreement, we were the lead town initially on it, and we would continue to operate as the lead town, which just means that we would handle the finances and some of the logistics of whatever it may be, and that's especially true if there's going to be a beneficial reuse. As before, all of the towns had an equal vote, and the same would be true under this agreement. One of the differences has to do with the costs, because under the prior agreement, all costs and budgeting were apportioned based on percentage use. Hence, we were the largest user of the facility, so we always paid over 50% of the budget and over 50% of the cost. Under this particular agreement, each town bears an equal share. So it's different because there are no actual costs being incurred on a percentage basis by any of the towns. It would also allow an assignment of the site to third parties, which the former agreement did not. So in an option like this, if there was any type of negotiation that could occur with a private enterprise or other entity for beneficial reuse of the station, then that agreement could be consummated, and part of the use could be assigned to them, but managed and governed by the Board of Managers, so that the towns would be able to exercise full control over whatever that may be. We would continue to have all the control of the site, but any capital costs or other costs would have to be appropriated through town meetings, so therefore even the annual operating budget, of which there would be a nominal budget for the facility, that gets appropriated annually under the annual budgets that we do for town meeting, and of course any capital increases that there may be will be the same. And then this agreement expires in a 3-year term, unlike the original agreement, which was a very long term. This one is set to expire in June of 2018. So the recommendation is for the board to continue Falmouth's participation in the regional option here in order to try to have some type of mutual benefit for the future, whatever that may be. It's a valuable site, not only because of the acreage and being centrally located between 151 and 28, but also because it has railway access. So we don't yet know what the options may be.
Is Bourne now an equal member as opposed to before because they didn't participate in the transfer station?
Yes.
They were kind of an unequal member?
Yes.
So now they're an equal member?
Yes.
Okay.
Sam? Ray, you mentioned the rail system. Is that system going to remain usable? Currently there's no trash being hauled on it, at least from the transfer station across the bridge at this point. But will that system be maintained even though the transfer station is not being used?
Yes.
Okay. Are there other towns that actually use the train system to go to Seamass?
Yarmouth.
Yarmouth. Okay.
Any other questions? Rebecca?
Is there a cost to Falmouth to belong to this group with the other towns? Do towns pay a membership? Is there,
I don't know that
are
I
there
would-
fees that we pay?
I don't know that I would call it a membership. One of the actual bills that will be a recurring bill is electricity. We have to be able to keep the lights on out there. But that's a nominal expense. But then there may be other, I would think, minor expenses that the board may want to consider. So where we are now is that we're finalizing this year's budget and returning monies, unspent monies, back to the respective towns, and maintaining $30,000 within this year's appropriations for the facility, and anything that is unused out of that $30,000 would then roll over into the subsequent year. So therefore, I don't expect that for this year or next year that there would be any additional monies allocated to the facility, and then thereafter, somewhere in the range of maybe $10,000 a year that would be shared amongst the town, so that'd be about $2,500 a piece.
That's what I wanted to know.
Sam?
Thank you.
Just one more question. I know it was mentioned last year about this time, but when do they expect the Bourne landfill to actually reach its capacity? I'm just thinking about what we might be looking at if that ever changes.
I can't speak for them specifically because I don't know exactly what their numbers are, but I do know that they have under contract a significant amount of their airspace. So what that means, that they had an agreement with CMAS for taking some of their ash, which took up quite a bit of their available capacity, and then of course there's the agreement with Falmouth, which took up some of the remainder of that capacity, so they don't have much capacity left for sale, if you will. But as far as what that actual duration is, I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
Any other questions? How would you like to proceed?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the new intermunicipal agreement with Upper Cape Regional Transfer Station.
Second.
Second. Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Unanimous. Okay. Next item are to, thank you very much, Mr. Jack.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might pass this around for everyone's signature on this first page.
There are 5 pages, 5 copies.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Do we sign it now?
Yep.
One for each town plus an extra copy.
Did they come up today?
It's right here.
Came up last week.
Okay.
All right, our next item of business,
Like that's it.
we have some interviews and voting and appointing committee members, and first with the Conservation Commission.
Thanks, Frank.
We have 2 alternate member positions available, and we have 2 applicants. First on the list is Betsy Gladfelter. We have Betsy here. The 2 vacancies we currently have are alternate member terms, unexpired terms that expire on June 30th, 2016. You'd introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you know about the Conservation Commission. Well, no, we don't have time for that. As to why you might want to be back on it.
No time.
Why I want to be back? Well, actually, I'm thinking right now, this is past my bedtime, so I'm not sure, but I think the meetings are shorter now. No, why I'd like to be back. I've worked in coastal science all my life, either doing research or teaching or being involved in regulatory boards, and it's something I can contribute to Falmouth. I think we have a great environment, and as much as everybody hates regulations, if they apply to themselves, I think regulations in many areas have helped maintain Falmouth as we would like to have it.
Do we have any questions for Dr. Gladfelter?
Yeah, I have a question. You served 9 years on the Conservation Commission.
I did.
And I know,
I did, yes.
Was it more than 9 or was it just 3 consecutive terms?
Well, I started as an alternate member.
That's right.
And then
That's
became a
true, you
full
did,
member
yeah.
the next June.
I guess, and I know you have obviously a science background and you're very much interested in coastal resources and natural resources and in all of that. But what have you liked most about the Conservation Commission? I know you say that people oftentimes are just not happy with the regulations, but they know that that's the way it is and that's the way it's going to be. And I guess they just walk away accepting it. I mean, I don't know. But it must be difficult when you have to face an applicant that really, really doesn't want to do what they're being asked to do. So in the end, now that you've had a year away, over 9 years, what is really good about the Conservation Commission that makes you want to come back?
Well, yeah, your first question is, why do I like to do it?
Yeah.
Because I like the people that I interact with. I like the people that I've served with on the commission. I like the people who work in the Conservation Department. I like the people in town. I'm involved with a lot of projects in developing grants for the town, and so I know most of the people in Town Hall and in DPW, and I like working with the people. So that's one thing that's high on the list. The other thing that's high on the list is it gives me an opportunity to see all parts of the coast that most people have certain parts of the coast that's, you know, they like to go to Old Silver Beach, or they like to go to Minot Beach. But when you're on the Conservation Commission, you get to go to wetland areas all over town, and it's really quite spectacular.
So I think in your experience there, do you think that the current bylaws that the town has really does help preserve the resources of the town, the coastal natural resources of the town? Or are there things that we should be doing that the Conservation Commission could do by regulation that they are not doing?
Well, I think the bylaw is good. And the regulations, just like any regulations, have to be assessed to see their best use. In fact, you might find this hard to believe, but one of the engineers that we see regularly on the board said, well, when you get back on the board, I want you to, would you look at this part of the regulations? And I said, well, I don't know that I'm going to get back on. I would not presume what the Board of Selectmen would vote on anything. But if I do get back on, yes, we'll look at that.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next candidate is Courtney Bird. Courtney also had served, reached his term limit, and both Courtney and Betsy had taken a year off per the town charter, and they're now eligible to be reappointed.
Yeah, I actually served 11 years, 3 full terms, and then part of an unexpired term. And in the beginning of serving the unexpired term, after about a year and a half, I was the one that talked Betsy into getting onto the commission as well, because I've known Betsy for a long time, and she's has a wonderful balance between her scientific knowledge and her common sense, and I think you all are aware of that. So I thought she was ideal for the commission, so I hope you voted her. And I guess as far as why do I want to go back after taking a year off and doing this for 11 years, part of it is that I've been a resident of this town full-time since 1980, and I've lived here part-time since 1972, and the town means a great deal to me. And I happen to live on the back of Little Sippawisset Marsh, and I look out at that resource every day, and it's important to see that that's preserved. And I've been on the commission about 4 or 5 years, and my brother-in-law from Ottawa, Canada, came down, and he had been at my house many times, and he sat in the backyard, and he said, Falmouth is really an amazingly wonderful town. She says, I look out at this marsh, and it's the same as it was 35 years ago. And that's because you guys must have regulations that work. And I think that's, he's right, and I was pretty pleased with that. The Conservation Commission is a tough job, and it's anybody that gets on there, you sort of wonder why they're a glutton for punishment, maybe. Because there's a classic conflict between the regulations and the regulatory law and so on, and individual property rights. Our job as a commission is to be mindful of those individual property rights, but also mindful of the fact that what makes Falmouth Falmouth, and good regulation is good regulations fairly enforced. And I echo Betsy's concern. I think we do need to look at the regulations that we have and see ways in which they can be improved. That doesn't mean stiffened necessarily. It means, be more fair and so on. And I always felt from the time I got on, given my background as a builder and as an educator that, I could fill a good role between balancing between concerns for the environment, which is number one, but also concerns for property rights of the individuals. And I think part of our role on that commission is to be educators. The town cannot walk around with a club and a bludgeon and force people to do things they can't do. I mean, it's just, so part of our role on the commission is not only to enforce regulations and see that, but you've got to get people to buy into them. You've got to get people to be willing to want to, because it's in their interests, abide by the regulations that come in. And that's a tough sell. Not everybody's going to do that, but you got to have that as a goal. So that's what I want to get back on.
I'm particularly impressed that one of your references you've listed is someone who has come to the commission and had to argue for what he wanted, and yet you're still willing to have him be a reference for you, and I think that's a testament to what you're saying about getting to a solution.
Well, I got to do something in my retirement.
Some questions for Mr. Byrd? Yep.
I would just like to comment about what you just said, and I hope it continues with the Conservation Committee, because there seems to be such a feeling sometimes in Falmouth that it's easy to just tear it all up and put down some cement and a little bit of glass around it and call it a building, and it bothers me. So I am really glad that you were so dedicated to the cause that you were just talking about. And when your friend sat and looked at that marsh and said, it's just like it looked 30 years ago, is a wonderful sentence to hear in Falmouth.
Yeah, and we sit here in our town and we take a lot of things for granted. So when somebody comes in from the outside and looks at it and makes that comment, and I've known my brother-in-law for a lot longer than I served on the committee, and he never struck me as an environmentalist, and so it struck me when he said, this is just amazing. And I knew that in the space of that 30 years, there had been a lot of changes in that marsh, some for better and some for worse, but the key was that's a perception. And we have, not only do we have resources such as our water and our shoreline and the marshes and the buffers and all of that, but the town itself is a resource. And the reason people come and visit, the reason people come and buy homes here, the reason it's a tourist center is because of the fact that we've taken the time as a community to make sure that it stays the way it should. And it's a struggle, because at the same time, there's development, and certainly, you can't stop that, but you can certainly make sure that it's done appropriately.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, thank you very much. I would like to take each nomination separately, if we're going to have any.
I will nominate Betsy Gladfelter.
Second.
I think we have to appoint to the alternate position first.
They're two alternate positions. They're both alternates.
They're both alternates?
Yep.
Okay, and that's for 1 year?
Till the term ending June 30th, 2016.
16.
And cannot start until July 1st.
1st of this
Right.
year. Okay.
Okay, we
Second.
have a motion and a second to appoint Betsy Gladfelter as an alternate member with a term ending June 30th, 2016. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Congratulations. Welcome back, Betsy. And any other business?
I'd like to move for appointment of Courtney Byrd to the other alternate position for the unexpired term until June 30, 2016, and beginning July 1, 2015.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All
Thank you.
opposed? None. Thank you to both of you.
And I think they do understand when a permanent position opens. You know the drill. You know the drill. Okay.
And we'd love to come back to selectmen meetings, too. One of our most favorite evening activities.
Get some
Thanks,
rest.
Courtney.
Our next interview is for the EDIC. We have an unexpired term which just goes until June 30th, 2015, according to my notes here. And we have one applicant, Christopher Longley.
Doesn't sound right.
Chris Langlis, North Falmouth. Good evening.
Do you enjoy the selectmen's meetings as much as Betsy?
Very nice. And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, in the interest of time, I'd like to read a brief statement.
Okay.
Before questions. Thank you. I'm Chris Langlis, and I come before you for a seat on the EDIC. With the present treasurer, Steve Spitz, stepping down after 9 years of distinguished service, I'm offering my time, energy, and experience to fill that upcoming vacancy. I'm employed as a commercial loan officer with Cape Cod 5 under Steve Spitz, and he informed me of the EDIC and the duties of the treasurer. He will help me make a smooth transition onto the board and into the role of treasurer if I am appointed. I also reached out to Jay Zavala, the EDIC clerk, to gain insight into the corporation's structure, activities, and time commitment. I'm drawn to the EDIC's mission of creating jobs and increasing our tax base by way of sustainable economic development initiatives. My educational background includes a finance degree from Boston College and a master's degree in real estate development from the University of Southern California. My work experience includes a financial leadership development program at Raytheon and over 10 years of commercial lending experience. Between my qualifications and Steve and Jay's contributions, I feel informed and prepared to join the EDIC board. I understand that as a matter of process, your selection and appointment will occur after considering the EDIC's recommendation, and I will be going to their meeting next week to be interviewed by them. In closing, I look forward to being of service to our community and adding value to the EDIC board, and I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you for your time, and I'll open up to questions.
Do you have any questions? Yep. Sue?
Sure. How would you describe the support of your employer to the added time that the EDIC may require if you are appointed?
I'm aware of the time commitment, and my employer will allow me to use time during the day for any meeting that the EDIC has. So I'm open to whatever time requirement there is.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Sam?
Chris, do you have any strategies for furthering the goal of economic vitality for Falmouth that you're going to bring to the EDIC, at least in mind?
I've read about the current developments that the EDIC also manages, Raymond Park and the Technology Park. And I first want to start off by learning more about what they did there, and then look at what future projects that the EDIC can focus on and try to work on as a goal. So immediately, I don't have any immediate goals for the EDIC, but as I join the team and learn about what they're looking at currently, I think I'll have a tremendous amount of input based on my education and my experience.
Question? Yeah, Rebecca?
I don't exactly have a question as such, but just in reading your application, I don't think anyone takes it lightly to be a member of the EDIC. I think it's a challenge every meeting. I think the town depends on what we hear from them. So I just, in looking at your background, looking who your references are, I would say you would be a very good person to be on the EDIC.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I do think we need to clarify exactly what is the term that we are filling, and so I don't think we can make this appointment until we get that clarified. I think that will also give the EDIC a chance to do whatever interviewing and recommending they want to make.
I think it's going to be a 3-year term, but
Right.
we can look at that.
Right, I think we have to make sure about that.
Yeah.
Well, my understanding is that normally the EDIC makes a recommendation to us after they have interviewed the candidates, but that hasn't happened yet. So I think we agreed that we would not make the appointment tonight until we receive the recommendation from the EDIC.
Okay.
But I have a question, because I happen to know your bank president. I mean, she's very well known on Cape Cod, as you probably know, but also was the previous president of the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce. And I know that in working with Wendy Northcross there, what they have come up with is is the real connection between housing and jobs. And that if we as a region do not address both of those issues together, if we have the jobs, then we won't have the affordable housing. I don't say affordable, well, it is affordable, not in the sense that we know it. The housing that people can afford to live in. And if we don't have the housing, then we won't have the jobs. So do you see that as partly that a role that the EDIC could play a part in and help move forward, at least in this community?
I do see it as a part of the puzzle. And looking at the EDIC's website, it did mention affordable housing and how that is a component in improving the economic climate of the community. And so I think that is an important part, and that's something that I think that we should also take a look at.
Yeah, so it's, okay, go ahead.
Jim?
You heard the presentations of the candidates for the Conservation Commission. You know, when we think in terms of development, we're always concerned about the environmental impact. Have you thought about development that basically would be environmentally friendly in the sense that compatible, I guess is the right word, and compatible with, you know, the culture that we're trying to preserve here in Falmouth, for instance? Have you thought about possible strategies?
Well, I was a summer kid here, so I understand. I grew up in Mashpee, understand the Cape, and then I lived in Los Angeles for the last 12 years, where it was the opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of development. And a lot of the projects I was working on in California related to redevelopment and preserving the little land that they do have remaining. So I understand the different components, and I'm actually more focused on trying to redevelop a site that is either blighted or something that can be improved rather than just finding a vacant piece of land. So I agree with that.
Great. Thank you. Questions? Okay. I think we will take that under advisement for this appointment, so we get a recommendation from the EDIC. I think the order of whether they interview first or we interview first doesn't really matter, but we do want to get their recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Next interview is for the Zoning Board of Appeals. We have a full member vacancy. Paul Murphy is our applicant. Again, I do want to confirm that this is a term also ending on June 30th, 2015, because of the resignation of David Haddad. So this is actually a term that would be for just 1 month, at which point you could apply for a reappointment.
Okay, sure. My name's Paul Murphy, and I've been a resident of Falmouth for 15 years, and I saw that there was a vacancy on the Board of Appeals, and so I thought that I would apply and try and fill that need. In my professional life, I'm the building commissioner for the town of Dartmouth, a town of about 38,000 people, and I run the building department there, so I'm very familiar with boards of appeals, the role that they play in the town. And I think that my professional life, what I do on a daily basis, would make me an excellent match for the board, because I understand the complexities of land use and zoning bylaws, and the trust that the town puts in members of the Board of Appeals to make decisions on matters that affect people's property rights, and discretion is important. So that's why I applied.
Questions? Rebecca?
Have you ever attended a zoning board?
I have, not in quite some time, but I attend them in Dartmouth, and you know, a lot of bylaws are very similar when evaluating variance or special permit criteria. The threshold is generally the same. It varies a little bit from town to town. I'm not an authority on the Falmouth zoning bylaws, but it wouldn't take me much time to get up to speed, that's for sure.
Any other questions? Do you have any worry that an applicant might say, oh, this guy's going to support the building commissioner's determination because they're on the same team of being building commissioners?
No, I don't think that would matter at all. I think very independently, and no, I don't see a conflict there.
Okay.
I would evaluate every appeal of the building official on its own merit, understanding that the board has the
steps in and can fill the role as building inspector. On an appeal, the board has all the powers of the building inspector.
Right.
And so, no, I don't see any sort of a conflict with that at all.
Any other questions? Okay. I guess I do want to reiterate and apologize that if this is appointment, you'll have to come right back
Not
in a
at
few
all.
weeks to do the whole thing all over again. Okay. What is the pleasure of the board?
I move that we appoint Paul Murphy to the Falmouth Zoning Board of Appeals for the term, well, apparently, ending June 30th of 2015.
We have a motion and a second?
I think Becky seconded.
Yep, Becky second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you again soon.
Thank you for
Thanks.
stepping in.
Next item of business is a sign variance, request for a sign variance from the Falmouth Rotary Club. Yep.
Before we go on to that next topic, we were given a list of all the regulatory committees that we have with appointments, and I know at the Community Preservation Committee, they were concerned that the Board of Selectmen's appointment to that committee would not get reappointed in time. And I see we have a list of those people. So my question is a procedural question. Do all of those positions that we've appointed to serve on various committees, do we send out a notice and actually ask them whether they want to continue?
Yes.
And if they want to continue, do we have to actually revote them? at that point?
Regulatory boards, we must interview and revote.
Okay.
The non-regulatory boards, if there is no other applicant, we can just reappoint.
Okay. But they'll receive a notice or an application form to fill out?
Yes.
That's how it's going to...
It's actually what started, that letter's what started the process to create this list.
Great. I'll report back to them then. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a sign variance for an off-premises sign from the Falmouth Rotary Club breakfast.
Hi, I'm Phil Kerfoot. I'm Board of Directors of the Falmouth Rotary. The board has already passed on the event. This event is a pancake breakfast that's going to be held on Saturday, June 13th, jointly by the Falmouth Rotary and the Masonic Lodge. However, we have 4 sandwich signs that we like to put up, and they end up on public property because they are next to the road. So even though they fit the requirements of the sign committee of being 6 feet, because of that requirement, we have to get permission from the board for the use of those signs. And so I'm before you then to request our use of the signs and placement. We have the positions that they're going to be put, and we have gotten approval for the board the past 4 years for the same signs and same locations. So I would hope that you could favorably pass on that. This event that we're hosting is a fundraising event for both VIPS, Volunteers in Public Schools, and also for the Rotary Foundation.
Any questions or comments?
I move approval of the request for the off-premise signs.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And
Opposed? None?
we thank you again.
Thank you for all your charitable work.
Next is a request for off-premises sign by the Fresh Pond Holy Ghost Society for the buffet breakfast. Do we have anyone from the Fresh Pond Holy Ghost Society? There's a request for 5 off-premises sign, and these are also are less than 8 square feet, so it does not need approval by the Design Review Committee, it just needs our approval. These are 5 locations. The first week of each month from Monday to Sunday, May to November 2015. Sandwich Road, East Falmouth Highway in 2 locations, Route 151 to the Cape Cod Fairgrounds, and 408 Carriage Shop Road. Yep.
I also see that they have obtained permission from each of the property owners. I'm going to move approval.
Okay, we have a motion
Second?
and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? And then next, a request for sign variance is off-premises sign for the cultural survival. And it's for two different signs, one at Peg Noonan Park, and the other at Main Street and Scranton Avenue. The Design Review Committee had no problems with these.
Actually, I have a little problem, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
With putting a sign at Peg Noonan Park. I mean, I don't know what that really does. I can see signs at the intersections and the other locations around town, but, I mean, other than the fact that the Cultural Survivor Group had been there for the previous, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, I don't know if we want to get into the practice of having people put signs on Peg Noonan Park. Just something to think about. It may not be the worst thing in the world, but usually intersections, corners, places like that are more appropriate for signs. But I suppose if people were going there thinking they were going to be there,
Right.
that's probably the whole idea. So maybe this year, and
I
then
think
see
that's what they
happens.
said it was,
Okay.
Yep.
that they wanted to notify the new location.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with it this year, but after that, we'd hope it was no longer. I
Yeah,
don't want
that's
to
a
set that
good point
precedent we
for
do all the
next
time.
Yeah,
Agreed.
okay. Then I make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, the ayes have it. We have one seasonal license renewal. This is for the lodging house, the Beach Rose Inn, 117 Chase Road. Would you like to?
No, no. I move approval of the seasonal lodging license renewal for the Beach Rose Inn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Okay, do we have any individual selectmen's reports?
Well,
Mr. Patterson?
I've already mentioned that I attended the Massachusetts Municipal Association meeting in Boston, and I have to say it was very helpful. Jim, I'm drawing a blank on the name, but Mr. Cronin, who is now the Senior Deputy Officer at the Department of Local Services, formerly, I think was Assistant Town Manager in Brookline.
Correct, yeah.
Spoke at this gathering, as well as our legislative briefing member of the staff, John Robertson. Anyway, but I was particularly impressed with Mr. Cronin's discussion with the group of selectmen that were there and other town administrators, because it's coming through over and over again pretty consistently that the Baker administration, the governor's administration, is really interested in trying to support municipalities in their efforts to maintain the quality of their communities. Since it's coming so consistently, we heard it at the annual meeting in January, I'm beginning to believe them. And they have a new program called the Community Compact, where communities will essentially commit to trying to establish best practices in any of about a dozen areas or more. And if you participate in that, they'll actually provide some grant funding to actually help you implement them through some professional development types of monies. But anyway, I'm very impressed, and it sounds like that the new administration is very much oriented trying to support local municipalities in their various efforts. And they keep citing the fact that Governor Baker was a selectman for a number of years. So was Lieutenant Governor Polito. And here we see a member of a town administration serving in that Department of Labor Services department. So that was an informative meeting and worth the trip to Boston, I might add. I attended the first meeting of the Affordable Housing Committee in quite some time. We finally have a quorum, thanks to us appointing them sufficient members. And they're in a point of organizing and getting themselves together and kind of figuring out how to chart a course that will be productive for the town. Enjoyed, along with my colleagues here, the Memorial Day ceremonies. It's always a nice occasion, and we had great weather. So it was a very nice opportunity for us to stop and remember the services and the commitments that and the roles that people have played in defending our rights and liberties here in Falmouth and across the entire country. Also attended the Friends of Nopska Light Organizing meeting. They're moving along very nicely, still awaiting a formal lease from the Coast Guard. and negotiating that out. But certainly are getting some great people and set up and planning just where they're going to go as soon as we get that property under lease and we can take off and start doing some things to make it even more special to Falmouth than it is sort of as a visual icon right now that it serves. So, and then attended the Cape Cod Commission's hearing on the Marriott Hotel presentation on Tuesday. It was definitely an interesting set of comments made by everybody there, and I was glad to be there to participate in that. And then finally, the Community Preservation Committee last Thursday, where they're beginning to look at new project applications, and we just heard about one that's going to be coming from before them from the 300 Committee and the Conservation Commission. So that's what I've been up to.
Rebecca?
I think all of us were probably at the Cavosa hearing and at the Marriott hearing, and I think Pat can make the report on that one. But another meeting that I went to was for transportation. And one of the things they're most interested in is that this group will reinstate the Transportation Committee. And they even had an idea of how it would be operated, that there would probably, their idea was that there would be 4 meetings a year and an agenda of something that the Board of Selectmen is interested in would be their agenda. So Tom Kayer was there, and I think one of the finest conversations to have with him concerning the transportation and just the amount of traffic that we have, and he has here in Falmouth, and he has a very good grasp on the problems with the traffic in Falmouth. And so there was a thought of how much Kathleen Bates Road can be used as the parallel road to Main Street, and I think we've talked about that at different times. So there were probably 7 or 8 people there, very active, very interested in the transportation in Falmouth and the assistance that you would get from the county or the state, and any ideas that would come from this board and go to that group.
I'll just echo Sam's comments on Memorial Day. I don't think there's a better day to get a sense of pride in the town. And I also attended the informative meeting on Marriott. There will be another meeting coming up. There are, gosh, probably about 120 people there. And the next meeting will be advertised. It's coming up in a couple of
June
weeks.
16th.
170 people.
170.
Right now, it's June 16th, scheduled to be at Morse Pond.
It's going to be at Morse Pond. They did announce Lawrence,
Right.
but because of a conflict, it's going to be at Morse Pond. It's not the auditorium, right?
Which Selectman Flynn set up, and I've already been emailing them about questions on the traffic study, so if anybody else has questions or comments, it might be a good idea to send those in advance.
Well, I'm a member of the subcommittee, so I'm going to not comment on it at this point. Because I'm the county commissioner's representative to the Cape Cod Commission, so I serve on a number of these. And not to scare you, but last summer, in July and August, when Lowe's was applying to be in Dennis, we had 39 hours of hearings on the Lowe's project. And I can't tell you how many hundreds of people testified. And it was back and forth, back and forth. You couldn't tell at the end whether the community was really for it or they were not for it, because the numbers were so close. And the selectmen never weighed in on it either, which I thought was something that we may, at a certain point in time before the hearings close, may want to weigh in if we choose to do that, and you can think about that. But I think it's very helpful to the commission when they know what the town thinks, what the town officials think of a project.
Just on that point, is there a Lowe's in Dennis now?
No, it was denied. And it was denied. It was very interesting because it went before the commission. And when I said it was like 50 to 49 or 51 to 49, either way, and it would bounce back and forth. And when it actually came down to the vote in the commission was 8-7, denying it. And they never appealed it. So I think it was pretty clear that it was just an overwhelming project for exit 9. That's where the highway merges into one lane,
Okay.
which makes exiting and heading down towards P-Town, where most people on the Lower Cape would have probably come up and stopped there. How would they ever get in a one lane on a Friday afternoon? But anyway, so that's what happened. But I just want to tell you that sometimes these hearings go on for a long time, but everybody who wants to have something to say has their opportunity, and their comments are weighed. I wanted to mention the All Cape Selectmen's meeting, which is a week from this Friday, June 12th, at the Daniel Webster Inn in Sandwich, which is nice. It's not that far away. And we are having a panel of town manager presenters. The moderator of the panel is Bob Lawton, who's the retired town manager from Yarmouth. And one of the panelists is sitting next to me, Julian Suso from Falmouth, and the other one is Bud Dunham, who is the town manager in Sandwich. And the topic is budgeting in the future, addressing the needs of our towns and our ability to foot the bill. So I think it'll be a very interesting and informative discussion, don't you, Julian?
Indeed.
Good. Okay.
Very informative.
That's my report.
For our next meeting, I would like to have us just reaffirm our liaison assignments. I'm not sure we need to make any changes, but we can just republicize who was checking with which committees. Town manager, report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the risk of being redundant, this is important, so bear with me. Just a reminder about the meeting this Thursday, June the 4th at T-Ticket School at 6:30 p.m. It is an informational meeting for property owners in the Little Pond Sewer Service area, and the presentations will be by staff and committee members as well, and there will be an informational handout, as has been noted. So we do look forward to those interested joining us for that informative evening. On Thursday and Friday of this past week, Heather Harper and I were pleased to attend the spring meeting of the Massachusetts Municipal Managers held in Edgartown this year. It provided a specific training opportunity, which is much appreciated, and also afforded an opportunity to compare notes on a variety of matters with our fellow managers and assistants, all those involved in municipal management. A very good two-day session. Also, just to confirm, the board will be holding your annual strategic plan retreat on Saturday, June the 20th. This is, as the board is aware, a very, very important annual event resulting in your strategic plan for the town. Our tentative schedule would begin at 8:30 a.m. and end at approximately 1 p.m. That will be further confirmed, of course, and posted as per standard procedure. More information to be forthcoming on that. And we are still working on a follow-up joint meeting date and time with the planning board, which has been discussed in the recent past as well, so more to come on that going forward. And that concludes my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other business?
Move to adjourn. Second.
Motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.